Hi, this is the development group conversation for March 29th. I'm going to kick us off here. I'm Wayne Haber, Director of Engineering. And let's see here. So it looks like Sid has the first question.
Hey, Wayne, what's GHID in the sentence I pasted?
Sid, do you want to verbalize?
Yeah, what's the GHID in the sentence I pasted?
Those are greenhouse IDs, Sid. So it's greenhouse is the tool we're using for recruiting and coordinating hiring. And it's an ID identifier that they use that we coordinate with finance to track recs.
That makes a ton of sense to me. I think it's not in the hiring guidelines of GitLab, but it is in the manage stage. So have a look whether we have that as an abbreviation in the handbook.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I'll have to look around to see about that. It's just, the normal parlance we're definitely using between myself and finance to make sure we identify the recs.
I totally see it. I see that engineering is on it. Oops, but I only see it in the engineering part of the handbook.
Okay, I'll talk to Colleen about that within finance.
Thanks.
So do you want to verbalize your next question? And I could probably respond to that. Christopher's typing too.
Yeah, what's the status of work to set up the ClickHouse team?
Yeah, so the I'll take this one, Christopher. Status is that, so within the kind of OpsTrace observability acquired team, we're already working on ClickHouse production readiness. So that's kind of been part of the plan. And there's a couple engineers that are working on that. There's also the borrow request that we've been discussing. And so we may be bringing more people into that effort to accelerate it. And that's currently being discussed. We're basically identifying who would be the candidates to bring over for that.
And then
go ahead.
One other thing to add, Stan is also looking at this. I asked him if he would devote some of his self-directed time. And he's obviously balancing a number of initiatives, but he started working on the initial integration to get this working with GitLab.
Yeah, so I understand that because of the short timelines, we need to borrow people, but like I don't see any open vacancies on our website. I would assume that we would also partner. There's 2 companies around ClickHouse that are helping other companies with this. Have we considered those?
We've had engineers in that group meeting with the ClickHouse team, so clickhouse.com. And so we have had some, I don't know if I'd call it a partnership, but interaction and kind of advisement from them. There's also a few offers out to backend engineers in that group, so they're not specifically advertised as ClickHouse, but yeah, we have several people starting. One actually who has some significant ClickHouse experience. So those are hired but not yet started, those roles.
On one hand, I get that we have generic vacancies and that you don't know exactly what team people are going to end up, but it seems like we're looking for specific expertise here. So I'm surprised that doesn't show up in any vacancies.
Sam, there was a headcount reset in flight with Kenny, right? What's the status of that? That's where we would identify the formal roles, but the trade-off has to be made, right?
Yeah, there's a borrow request, which is kind of, under discussion now, I think, moving forward. But yeah, it's basically at the point where we're identifying who would be the specific individuals. So yeah, that's correct.
One thing to note is there are a few departments where actually people are I won't say volunteering people, but they're excited to potentially have people from their team because they see ClickHouse as a useful backend store for them. Manage Optimize is one of those. And I believe actually the SEC section was also interested in that regard, though Wayne, you may have more details there.
Let's accelerate that bar out because that's where we get the actual roles that Sid's looking for that simplifies everything. And I know it's been, I think we discussed it last week and it had been open for 2 weeks. So we're going on a month or on the order of that. So feels like
Yeah, David and I discussed it yesterday. We had a list of folks that I presented to him with trade-offs. He was going to go through that, and I believe our goal is to basically identify those folks and start working through communication and transitions here in the next week to 2 weeks.
1 to 2 weeks. Okay.
Just to give it a due date, a goal.
And Sid, I'm going to paste here the job posting, which is on the job site that has ClickHouse mentioned in it. So
Awesome.
if you know anybody or have any advice for how to improve that posting.
I don't know anybody, but I think it's kind of an up and coming technology. So this is one of the things where it helps if we tweet about it, we talk about it, we find ClickHouse forums, etc. People are excited to work with this. So you might consider doing something more than you do for your regular vacancies.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'd say definitely as we've been working with it more, we've seen that more kind of examples of kind of up and coming, particularly observability technologies using ClickHouse. Sentry, for example, uses it in their backend. There's other examples as well. So I'd agree with that.
This is Fabian speaking. One of the things that I think is also important is that if ClickHouse is an important technology to achieve some of our sort of product goals in the future, then I think what we're looking for here is also a long-term setup so that we can maintain ClickHouse, that it can like serve more than one purpose in the product, and that we can utilize it more widely in the sort of medium term. I think that is quite exciting if we move in that direction.
I totally agree. So my next question was, what are the uses of ClickHouse? Tim first.
Yes. So apart from the two major use cases that are already outlined and are the biggest priority right now with ops trace stuff, and on the other hand, also especially the error logging, we are looking in dev, especially for Manage Optimize already for some time for a solution where we are struggling with big amounts of data to make value stream analytics on one hand performant, but also make it queryable so that you can really drill down and not get only just one view of your data, but that you can really filter it down, which makes it really usable, especially for the use cases where you want to analyze how is your organization doing. The other next thing that I wasn't able to write out, but I will write out in a second, is because I got this question already 2 times, just for people who are looking swiftly at ClickHouse. ClickHouse is an additional data storage that we want to add to the GitLab stack. This is not meant as a replacement for Postgres, for example, because that was also already one of the questions. This is really an enablement for giving us opportunities to work in analytics and querying really data efficiently in a much better and more performant way. Wayne.
There's also early talk of leveraging ClickHouse in the secure stage.
Just add on to what Tim was saying there. Yeah, definitely not a replacement for Postgres. And I've kind of started to think of it as we particularly move into monitoring observability and also this kind of data analytics space. There's different data requirements. There's more big data requirements. You can generate much more data with monitoring than other CI jobs like we've done before. And so it's really, ClickHouse is, I think, what we're kind of coalescing around in terms of a big data kind of analytics observability type data store. And then Postgres, I think, would continue to serve its purpose for the kind of relational data that we've worked with up to this point.
So is there some section in the handbook what we're going to use ClickHouse for? Because I certainly haven't seen it.
I don't think all that's in the handbook. We have an AMA later this week to talk about it. And there's an issue I linked up above where we're talking about kind of topology and beyond kind of the immediate project goals, kind of what's the right architecture to manage it. So I'd say that's in discussion. We're definitely interested in a lot of input and feedback on that. And they're kind of trying to find more ways to broadcast that and have that conversation. But not all of it's made it maybe to the point where it can be fully captured in the handbook.
I think that's a very dangerous thing to say. I think
As I was saying,
it's not to the point where it can be fully captured. That's handbook last spirit. We need handbook first spirit in this company. The handbook is not a documentation of things that are final. The handbook is a starting point. It's not we talk about things until we're done after months and then we put the final version in the handbook. The handbook is a living document. And at GitLab, we work handbook first. Because I ask, what are we going to use ClickHouse for? And half of the use cases are missed. And that's because we don't have a central place. I'm very, very much encouraging you to do AMAs, to do conversations. But the idea that you can only write things in the handbook when you're done is flawed. And we need that spirit back. We need the handbook first spirit back. So I encourage all leadership and engineering to bring that spirit back, because I'm not seeing it with this. I'm not seeing it with some other things. But I think this is a clear example. And I've outlined what we can add on the handbook page about ClickHouse. It's not a Postgres or Redis replacement. It's a column store. It's really good at summations over lots of rows. It's good for product analytics, logs, metrics, traces, error tracking, usage ping, manage, optimize for VSA and the SEC section. Let's get this rolling.
So Sid, thanks for holding us accountable. Apologies for not having this in the handbook yet. We'll take an action to get this in the handbook. Minimally, I think, Sam, what you're struggling with is the general applicability and not putting it on ops trace. The short answer is we could put this on the development page, even if it's at the top level, just put it somewhere. And then, if we have to move content later, we figure it out after that point. So I think it's a good call out. We've been a little bit slow in this area. We will work to improve there.
Thanks. And I think just like we have a database team, we're going to have a ClickHouse team. So we can just see that, group. We can just see this as a group and have it on the group page. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, we'll coordinate with the product team to potentially get that proposal up as well, because I think that's a good point, is that we anticipate a full group team here.
Yeah, I'm very encouraged that we already see possibilities to use it for manage, optimize, for value stream analytics and SEC, that those have come up over the last couple of times. I think it's a further proof that, look, we have the transactional database, we need the analytics database. It makes sense. And I think we need it sooner rather than later for a lot of these use cases. It's very sad that that error monitoring, we need it, and we right now we don't have it. So let's get that turned around.
Sid, I think your idea of having a dedicated sort of ClickHouse team, similar to the database team, makes sense. And I think that's an action we can take from product and enablement as well, and actually write that up and say, like, hey, this is the technology we want to support. These are the use cases. We need to enable other sections to utilize that. And then we have it, in sort of a good hand, and can make sure that it works well.
For sure. I think with managed VSA and security starting to use it, this is becoming bigger than any single group. And I think it's going to be very important technology for us going forward. And it's going to be a lot of work to set up the different ClickHouse clusters, to ship it in Omnibus and everything else. So we got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, Sid, I agree with your vision of the ClickHouse team, because we need to replicate a lot of tooling, documentation, and the monitoring facilities to run ClickHouse in the production.
Yeah, and probably we want to run kind of separate clusters for like an error tracking versus a logs metrics traces versus a manage optimize section.
Yeah.
Great to hear that we're finding more uses for it. That's very encouraging. Sam, plug for observability.
Yeah, just two things on what you just said, Sid. There's a discussion, an issue open this week about kind of architecture and topology. And I agree, we'll get that in the handbook, but there's a place if folks want to look at that and discuss it. And then, yeah, there is an AMA later linked to the agenda. So for folks, I know there's a lot of interesting questions in ClickHouse and observability. So I encourage everyone to attend that is interested and ask your questions there as well.
Cool, and we'll have to see how it goes. I mentioned integrating in Omnibus, but for now, I'm also supportive of just getting a great SaaS offering out there for everyone, and then allowing people to hook up their on-prem or their self-managed instances to the SaaS infrastructure. So I don't want to. I have an open mind about those. What we're going to do there. We know we're going to have SaaS for sure, so we can start there.
Just to comment a little bit on that side, one thing we've seen with the global search team and the use of Elastic, it's difficult to maintain two different database layers for a given feature. And so we're working to simplify that going forward. So I think, as we build features on top of ClickHouse, we should, probably be mindful and take some learnings of what we learned with Elastic and advanced search. We're now working on like a abstraction layer on top, so we can offer features independent of what's turned on down below. But if we can avoid that complexity without having to build support for different data stores, that would be ideal.
Josh, just to make sure I understand and everybody else understands, you're talking about that we have search within Postgres and we have advanced search in Elastic, and we don't require people that install Omnibus to install Elastic. In fact, it's a paid feature. So when you search for something, it needs to understand both ways.
Yeah, and it's at least a lot of complexities and less than desirable user experiences. You have to write the implementation twice. The user experience ends up being different. And there's a bunch of problems. So it's we're working to build a layer on top of both of these to basically make it so that people can write once and leverage either one, because otherwise it doesn't really become very, it becomes very expensive to try and have the advanced features of advanced search without it, and the performance at scale. For example, our free text search in Postgres isn't great, but we could use Elasticsearch for it and would be very fast. But that means two implementations without having this layer. So it's, as you build more on top to use it, it can be really more efficient if you can bake it in if possible, or just make the feature dependent on it rather than kind of this middle ground, which has been difficult in our experience with advanced search.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thanks for that. And unfortunately, kind of full text search in ClickHouse is not yet mature enough. Otherwise, we could have maybe bet on a future where we have ClickHouse and no longer Elasticsearch. But that seems a question of time, but unclear how much.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Joshua. I think overall, my 2 cents to this are that technologies evolve over time. Maybe ClickHouse search will mature. I think what we need to ensure in enablement and overall is that we can make these technologies available to our developers in a way that is easy, so that they can build features on top of it that are performing well, they work well for our customers. And I think that that's the ideal state, right, where people can easily utilize ClickHouse or Elasticsearch depending on what they need to do, and not have to worry too much about the added complexity. It's also hard.
Short term, we don't integrate Elasticsearch. We don't ship it with Omnibus right now. there's some, I think, Elasticsearch alternative. Oh no, I'm thinking of a Kafka alternative written in Rust. There's also some interesting Elasticsearch alternatives being developed, but I don't think they're mature enough.
No, but I think it's also interesting. There's been a little bit of discussion. It's very early on. There may also be some features in search, for example, code search, where Elasticsearch is maybe not the right technology to enable code search for the vast amount of code, and then we may need something else to support that as well. But that is very, very early on. In any case, yeah, Zerkt is one of those, exactly. Actually, don't know if this is pronounced like a German style Ö. When I see OE, I always pronounce it in that way.
It's Zoekt,
Zoekt.
but I'm not sure they pronounce it like that, but I'm pretty sure it's a Dutch word.
Yeah. I should work on my Dutch.
Depends on whether we're going to use Zoekt. But of course, we'd like to keep the number of data stores to the minimum, but not any lower. But already have Postgres, already have Redis. Looks like ClickHouse is going to be part of it. Vault maybe for secrets, or maybe will be Vault compatible or something like that, because the essence is kind of changing the secrets out. So we're starting SEG about that. Maybe we don't, so that people don't have to set up a Vault cluster. But it would be nice to not ship a whole bunch of others. Although it's more about how hard it is for people to run them than and for us to run them, then it's about the number of them.
And I think I'll find that handbook link. Jerry actually provided some guidance for teams recently on how to decide if they, for example, need a new database for certain functionalities, to sort of also make sure that we don't add complexity without considering these trade-offs and encouraging people to sort of think through their use cases a little bit. I'll find that link. I can't find it right now, but I think that's always worth pointing out.
Yeah, well, this is we're in the development conversation, but I'm curious what the discussions with infrastructure and quality have been like, because I think we'll want to bring them in as soon as possible, kind of talking about some of the lessons that we've learned from Elasticsearch and the search team and database team. I think the sooner we can bring those groups in, the better our execution will be here.
Yeah, and that's definitely been happening, Nick, and that there's been a lot of, there's a, I have to find the link, but kind of SaaS architecture diagram, which is now translated into issues, but that has been, I think, socialized pretty significantly in infrastructure. So yeah, trying to have all those conversations early, because you know, there's a lot of lead time on certain things.
Awesome.
We never ask it, but there's open and there's nothing left in the agenda. We're coming up right on time. So I think short of somebody yelling out right away, we're going to call it. Wayne, you want to close this out?
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate all the questions, and we'll close the meeting here.